Mr. Pemberton, I thank you for your service. I just want to ask you, could you just walk through, because the numbers don't lie. In the District of Columbia, there's been a reduction of 53% in homicides, 57% in robberies, 75% in carjackings. What lessons can be learned sort of at scale in D.C. and places like Kansas City, for example, that has a high crime rate and a sort of a apologist mayor and a prosecutor that doesn't want to prosecute violent criminals?
That's an excellent point. And what our organization has been shouting for the past 5 years, since I mentioned that the rhetoric and the policy changed back in 2020, is that you need to have the proper number of police officers, and they need to be able to have the tools and resources to go out into these communities and do their job professionally, responsibly, constitutionally. And if you do that, and you have a prosecutor that backs those officers, like we now do here in the District of Columbia, guess what? You can reduce crime in 7 days. That's what we saw in the District of Columbia. We saw federal agents surge in. We saw the National Guard taking posts in these neighborhoods. And we saw a prosecutor who took all of our arrests seriously. And within the first week, there was a remarkable night and day difference.
And a morale boost, I'm sure, for your officers too, right? When there's actually a police presence and prosecutions. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I also want to, Mr. Jackson, you're listed as the former Deputy Director of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, but you previously served as the Executive Director of the Community Justice Action Fund and now serve as the organization's Executive Advisor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were the Executive Director until 2023, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to just read some past statements from the Community Justice Action Fund. I'm just going to refer to as CJAF. In 2019, an op-ed, CJAF founder and another senior advisor stated the following, quote, "It is this critical moment. We're finally saying firmly that we must divest in policing," end quote. In 2020 letter, CJAF stated, "We must divest from aggressive policing." Further stated, public health approaches must be prioritized over policing to end gun violence, and that a, quote, "an anti-racist approach must always be a part of policymaking and advocacy on gun violence prevention." We all know what happened. Those were statements in 2019 and 2020. We all know what happened in the summer of love of 2020, where you had record high violent crime rates, including gun crimes, and gutted police departments. Does CJAF still support divesting and defunding policing?
Community justice supports a public health approach to gun violence and recognizes that law enforcement is an important part of that ecosystem. And I will note, as Deputy Director, we invested $42 billion into public safety, made some of the largest investments in law enforcement in American history. And this administration and this Republican leadership is actually proposing and making the largest defunding of law enforcement in American history to date.
But you don't deny that the organization said that we must divest in policing.
I can't speak to an op-ed before I was there.
Okay.
So.
Okay. In 2019, CJAF also said that every legislator that openly calls for mass deportations is enabling a mass radicalization of white individuals that are now emboldened to commit murder. Does CJAF stand by that statement?
I can't speak to that statement.
Do you believe that?
Can you reframe this?
Sure. That any legislator that openly calls for mass deportations is enabling a, quote, mass radicalization of white individuals that are now emboldened to commit murder.
I can't stand with a statement I didn't write, and I don't quite understand.
But do you agree with that?
I don't quite understand what you're
I just read you a statement. I'm asking you, do you agree with that statement or not?
No, I don't agree with that statement.
Thank you. CJAF also identified ICE as pushing a white nationalist agenda. Quote, "This white nationalist agenda is used by the deportation force of ICE in CBP to lock up black and brown immigrants across the country. It lives through the courts and police departments that lock up and kill black and brown bodies." Does CJF stand by that statement?
I can't speak to that.
Do you believe that that's true?
What is your reference to this? This
is a quote. This is a CJF identified in that same letter that I referenced earlier in 2020 that effectively ICE was a white nationalist organization that was trying to lock up and kill black and brown bodies.
Well, again, I can't speak to something that was written before.
Do you believe that?
Again, I can't speak to that statement.
So you agree with that or you don't agree with that statement? You think ICE's mission is white nationalist in nature and its intention is to kill black and brown people?
No.
Okay. It condemned calling for deportations. I'm out of time. I just would point out that this organization that you're advisor of is part of the TIDES network, which is directly affiliated with George Soros, and has gotten funding from USAID. So if you want to understand why people are so committed to making sure USAID doesn't fund these radical organizations, some of these statements are exhibits A, B, C, D through Z. Thank you, Madam Chair.